That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Volume 13. Part 2. Chapter 3. Maze Offensive and Defensive Warfare. Everybody, give it your all. I seem to have said that. No problem, I shouldn't be old enough to have Alzheimer's. Only about 3 years have passed since my reincarnation. No need to worry about that. That being said, seeing the scene reflected on the big screen, I began to wonder, did I really say that? That's because the big screen has already shown our army's complete victory. It's all right over here. That part was fine, but the content was brutal. It was a one-sided ravaging battle that even had me watching in awe. Gobta was so cool that he didn't look like himself at all, running wildly across the battlefield, beating the chariots to a pulp. Since he had been assimilated with Ranga, he was worthy of the title of the 4 heavenly kings in terms of appearance and strength. Gable also had his own doorway, transforming into what looked to be a very powerful dragon monster, and also appearing to have an unusually high-power mana attack that smashed the enemy's warship in one fell swoop. It wasn't just Gable, all the members of the Flying Dragon congregation were transformed, and that was no joke. Although I discovered that the secret behind it was dragon warriorization, I didn't know when they started using it so easily. It's time to forget about the effect of dragon warriorization before throwing it aside. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. That seems to have a time limit, and in fact can only be active for about 10 minutes with that state. But the reinforcement is just too big enough to make up for that. If used in the wrong place, it can become an act of suicide, but there is nothing wrong with using it as a great trick. However, the large explosions in the air made the fortified Gable look pale in comparison. I don't know what's going on, but the enemy's command battleship suddenly had a thermonuclear reaction and exploded, which also affected the Empire's airship forces, and finally caused a big explosion. Even I was shocked to see it. As far as results were concerned, the aerial warfare on the Empire's side had been destroyed by this time. One fell to the ground without being left behind. This became the beginning, and the Tempest army began to attack heavily. Gobta rendezvoused with the rest with Gable, and whoever watched would have known that the battle was in our favor. Even in the midst of modern warfare, helicopters would have an overwhelming advantage over fighting vehicles. By analogy, the Gable group also launched their breath attacks mainly from the air, unilaterally inflicting damage on the ground forces of the Imperial Army. Because the target is small, the chariot gun cannot pose a threat. Simply put, if you can't hit them, you can't succeed. It wasn't like the Empire just got pinned down and tried to fight back on several occasions. But it was only then that the counterattack began and was completely destroyed. It was Ultima's men, Veyron and Zonda, who struck. These two were worthy of the ancient demons, and seemed to have enough vision to see who was the expert, not to distinguish between captains or ordinary soldiers, purely choosing only the strong ones for blood sacrifice. They wore the butler's clothes and cook's clothes that stood out on the battlefield. Yet these became symbols of fear for the soldiers of the imperial generals. Hakuru was responsible for dealing with the enemy's supply chain. No mercy at all, 1 cut, 2 cuts. Among them are others who are planning to put in their names. Damn it. I'm number 97. Even without letting his opponent finish speaking, Hakuru's white blade flashed by and his opponent followed with a splash of blood. And said to those who were cut down by him, "Forgive me. Lord Rimuru is watching this battle. Since he has ordered us to do our best, I cannot be merciful." I didn't say those things from a point of view other than that it was a big deal. Having said that, I don't think there's any way to revoke the order at this point. If I had interjected at will, the battlefield would have been a mess. Finally I looked away and decided to watch the battlefield from the sidelines. No plug is the right thing to do. Seriously, the Imperial soldiers that Veyron, Zonda, and Hakuru packed away were already on par with the paladins in terms of fighting ability, or had been. And they were tricky to arm, with a higher performance than the spirit armor worn by the paladins, the equivalent of legendary levels. Taken together, you'll find these people are stronger. Even I was surprised to hear the parsing results of Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom. How did the Empire manage to get such strong equipment? It's useless to think about it when the facts are already in front of you. As for the people who got the equipment, could their true identities be the rumored Imperial Emperor's Order of the Near Guard? There was some information from Jadora's side, and I heard that there were also otherworldly visitors in it, and that the members of the organization were selected from among the Imperial Masters. The members are said to number around 100 or so. They also have rankings, which proves the rumors are true. Had these masters played to their strengths, perhaps the battlefield would have become more chaotic. It was right to go over and clean them up without waiting for the other person to be ready, like Akuru did. Veyron and Zonda did the same, secretly starting to finish up before these guys could even get their act together. With a few strokes, you can see through your opponent's strength, and being able to distinguish between the eyes of the strong is the most frightening. It shouldn't be so easy to deal with the enemy if they're all assembled. But on this point, the wrong people are the ones who are careless on the battlefield. If they had a complaint, they should have given it their all from the start. The words apply to us as well. If one casually sympathizes with the enemy, there is a good chance that they will take advantage of the situation. In this way, there is a great deal of damage to be done. Such a foolish act of causing injury to us in order to save the enemy soldiers is never allowed. While it's close to sympathizing with them, it's the same thing as underestimating your opponent if you win all the way. We are at war. It's time to chill out and please try to hang in there until the end. There is one more point to consider, and that is whether the enemy has expressed surrender to us. While I was watching Hakuru and their combat situation and saw as if he was enthralled, the Imperial Army's Combat Operations Commander appeared in an abnormal state. Notice: a mass annihilation magic death blessing has been confirmed. The user is the individual named Testarossa. Hearing Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, report this to me, I hurried to get the scene conditions projected on the big screen. The next thing you know, Testarossa and Ultima are standing there with a smile on their faces. There are no other survivors. The remaining strength, nearly 1,000 vehicles, also ceased operations, and all the infantry that had been deployed around them fell. The number is probably in the tens of thousands. There was a talk about death blessing, which shows that it is very dangerous magic. Answer: the death blessing is a nuclear strike magic that emits a magical death ray that causes creatures to become extinct. There are additional effects. Although Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, is happy to analyze and explain, how can such dangerous magic be used? I almost called it out, but it's human nature. It is said that the nuclear explosion used by Ultima is called the Flame of Destruction, but the danger of death blessing is higher. Testarossa should not be fighting them. When this magic is unleashed, victory and defeat are decided in an instant. There were absolutely no survivors on the enemy command side. It was only a matter of time before those remaining troops were eliminated. In this way, the battle between the Dwarf Kingdom and the Imperial Army ended in a complete victory for us. The Imperial Army that had been sent as bait to deceive was all but dead, as it literally means, all gone. I'm afraid there's no other military explanation for this either. We've all been too messy. I didn't think I'd cause this by just asking people to give it their all. And Benimaru had looked terrifying from just now. I say, if this turns out to be the case, doesn't my battle plan mean nothing? What is this? What are those intelligence officers up to? I've heard that they're under Lord Raimuru's direct command. May I ask you to clarify that? I just hid it a little in every way, but Benimaru turned to me with a very big smile and said so. This one, that one? It's impossible to have a plan of war that's all-encompassing. But then again, Benimaru, you're not the only one who wants someone to give you an answer. I just want you to give me an account. But how can such a heartfelt voice be spoken? For help, I sneak a look at Veldora. He averted his eyes in a flash. I know that Veldora is particularly unreliable at times like these, So is Ramirez, who didn't look like she was going to help me. It's nothing really, I told you that before. Those are the new companions Diablo poached. I know those are Diablo's men. It looks like there's no way to keep lying. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to be honest and give a full account of what happened. Normally, if it was Benimaru and Geld, even knowing their true identity and danger, knowing that they were in fact the primordials, those two would have accepted with a smile. And I'm going to hold Diablo responsible for all of it, so if anything goes wrong after that, we'll see what happens then. I armed myself with these theories and decided to get the truth out. Actually, that's right. Do you know about the primordials? You mean the original demons? It looked like Benimaru didn't know, and Shuna, who was making coffee, interjected to pick up the conversation. You're talking about the 7 kings, the 7 monarchs, who are the origins of evil, right? Hearing everyone's previous conversation, I was curious and ran to investigate. I was surprised to learn that Mr. Diablo was one of them. The definition of a primordial is an original demon, and I didn't know there was such an exaggerated appellation in the original. Saying that, Shuna told the important secret, but she had a peaceful smile on her face. The aroma of coffee wafted through the control room, easing the tense air. Meaning? Benimaru started muttering, looking puzzled. Geez, you don't know that, do you, brother? Not only Mr. Diablo, but even Miss Testarossa, Miss Carrera, and Sister Ultima seem to be primordials. Is that so? Yes. Shuna's smile was so dazzling. Faced with a smile like that, Benimaru couldn't seem to ask any more questions either. Squinting my eyes at the silent Benimaru, I began to think in my mind. Shuna is actually a big deal. I had already tensed my nerves when I was about to reveal a frightening secret, but it turned out to be so easy to reveal that I got nervous for nothing. But thanks to her outburst, I went along with it a little easier. Diablo, I'll let you speak for yourself. Yes, Lord Rimuru. Mr. Benimaru, I am actually one of the primordials, just as I was introduced. As I listened to Diablo's explanation, I started to drink my coffee. The black tea was good, but the coffee was also delicious. So it is, I have understood. That's why they're so awesome, right? In that case, I wish you would have told me from the beginning. No, I was afraid you'd be scared when you found out. If it was me or Veldora it would be a different story, but I really don't want you Benimaru to mess with anyone else's extra heart. I deliberately only emphasized this point because I was worried about my partner. As for the good things I do, giving them fleshly names, it's not appropriate at this point, so please don't go into it. I'm not scared either. Even Ramirez had said so, and I hope everyone didn't have any superfluous fears. Anyway, that's a lot of worry. As long as it's someone approved by Lord Rimuru, I will accept it as a partner. Well, Mr. Benimaru is right. Our partners do not treat us differently because of our appearance or strength. Benimaru wore a dark smile on his face, while Geld took it for granted. Just like that, it blew my worries away. Shuna didn't seem to have a problem with Diablo either. The proof is that she still treats them as she always does in a very general manner. That's good. It seems I'm the one who took the unnecessary heart. Ha, you should trust us more. That's it. It's too late for us to be thankful when we say that Lord Rimuru was worried about us accepting Miss Carrera and a few of them into our army. It was a little sheepish, but it was great that Benimaru and Geld were willing to take them in. One wonders what Gable and Gobda will think of them. As things stand, they seem to be getting along just fine. One should expect to have peace in the future as well. All in all, Diablo and I get along just fine. It should be all right. Xion jumped out to hang the reassurance, but I wasn't worried about how you were from the start. What does that mean, Xion? It means literally, Diablo. First Secretary Xion and Second Secretary Diablo began to glare at each other.
I've heard that the other side is the primordial and thought it was serious, but it turned out to be okay.
I felt relieved again, thinking that I was really over-worrying myself. Now that the story has been told, it is time for a reflection session. I think it would be bad if the enemy's army had Demon Lord level experts. That's why I arranged for Testarossa and the others to go there, but they seem to be trying too hard. Although the reason for this is my one sentence. I didn't expect people to make such a big deal out of it. Should we say they're messing around too much, or are they overdoing it? These guys are too cold. For they did not hesitate at all in annihilating the enemy. Kufa-fu-fa-fu. The effort was surprisingly overdone, and it looked a bit overwhelming. I'll come back later to educate them. Seeing Diablo chuckle and say such things, I didn't forget to tell him to stop in moderation. Anyway, I'll leave the rest to Diablo. I am sure he will educate people well so that they will not overdo it in the future. Next comes the confirmation of our damage. Less than 2 hours had passed since the battle had begun, and it had come to a full end. It seems that a lot of people have been injured, and it is not known what the victimization is. As for the current situation, all the injured are said to have recovered. A bright voice sounded in the control room. For those of us who go out to fight, we all distribute our own high-grade recovery medicine. Everyone gets 10 each. Thanks to these medicines, most injuries seem to heal immediately. And also the ones I thought were dead at first. In fact, they just faked their deaths, and even the missing limbs were completely healed with the full restoration of the potion's potency. It can be said that under Benimaru's command, they play the bait beautifully. Didn't you just say that? Don't worry about it. That's true. I certainly do believe you and everyone else. Everything is going according to Benimaru's plan. Surprisingly, it seems that only Testarossa and the girls are active. Although many recovery potions were used in terms of results, the number of casualties was 0. We got the big, unexpected win. But not entirely free of damage. Just look and see Gable and the flying dragon crowd under him. Because the use of the special skill Dragon Warriorization seems to do a lot of damage to the flesh. Originally, I wanted to say that the effect of this move was so powerful, but as it turned out, the bad thing was not just the time limit. As soon as the battle was over, barely a physical reaction appeared, and it was heard that the whole body would be as if paralyzed, and the whole person could not move. Because it wasn't an injury, even the recovery medication didn't work. Since they were absorbing the surrounding magical elements to build strong flesh, the reaction of repelling foreign objects was only possible. This time, Gable's arrogance was too much, and not only him, but all the members of the Flying Dragon congregation suffered the repercussions. It's the only thing that's good enough. I hope they do some soul-searching. By the way, it was added that this state would last for about 24 hours or so, and it was later concluded that the move could only be launched once in 2 days at most. This time, they won after giving it their all, but if they use it in the wrong place, they might get themselves killed. That force is equivalent to a double-edged blade, so I want them to be more careful. Let's change the subject and talk about what's going on over there in the Empire. Lieutenant General Geist's division of magic-guided chariots had 200,000 men under his command. There were 40,000 people in the Air Combat Flying Corps led by Major General Farragut. Regarding the war power the Empire possesses in this regard, we have also confirmed it with Master Ghidorah. Answer. No captives were taken. Because everyone was killed in action. That adds up to about 240,000 people. It was a massacre. How could I not be heartbroken? But when I became the Demon Lord before, I had already killed 20,000 people with my own hands. I don't want to argue about it now. Not to mention that after killing about 240,000 Imperial Army soldiers, many souls seem to have entered my body. It wasn't long after the war started that I felt the souls build up like crazy. This feeling is that the Ministry is collecting souls for me. Thanks to this feeling, I seem to be able to correctly grasp the number of enemy soldiers who were beaten down. That being said, there are so many human souls that have been acquired. To evolve from a Demon Lord seed to a true Demon Lord 10,000 offerings are required to satisfy. So what happens when you come to about 240,000 souls? The answer is no change. That means that I've reached my evolutionary limit by awakening as the true demon lord, right? So to speak, if it wasn't for that, Guy would have been killing humans so wildly that they would perish by now, so let's take souls this way. Because intuition told him he would never evolve again, he didn't engage in needless killing. Didn't expect to receive unexpected news at this point. Notice, the number of souls acquired has exceeded the required number. At present, it is possible to awaken others who are connected through the soul corridor. The subordinates are. And so it was that Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, uttered the unbearable words. It seems that if one quantifies the soul of those who are qualified, they may be able to awaken. I thought it would be meaningless to get so many souls, but even if it doesn't affect my own evolution, it can still be used for my subordinates to evolve. According to Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, there are several people who seem to have met the conditions for awakening. By giving me the acquired souls, they will be able to awaken, with a power as powerful as the true demon lords. The necessary number of souls is 100,000. In order to awaken his subordinates, I never thought I would need up to 10 times as many souls. So far, no one should know about this. While it is possible that Guy had knowledge, God only knows. Even if you know it, it shouldn't be that easy to implement. Might as well pull in the people who have become true demon lord seeds and guide them to awaken, faster that way. That's why Guy held a party of masters like the Walpurgis and wanted to choose someone worthy of being a partner. More than that, there may be other reasons. But it's also possible that I'm thinking too much of him, when in fact he doesn't even know. Needing at least 100,000 souls is a big battle. It's like killing everyone in a metropolis, there's no easy way to do that. In a word. Currently, I have an accumulation of extra souls in my body, about 250,000 or so. Using all that up should awaken 2 people. The subordinates who can be awakened are Ranga, Benimaru, Shion, Gable, Geld, Diablo, Testarossa, Ultima, Herrera, Kumara, Zejan, and Adalman, 12 of the above. Notice. Do you want to create soul corridors for your subordinates to evolve? Yes/no. According to this passage from Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, it can be learned that even the other party can make it evolve even if it is far away. Just like Veldora, simply connect using the soul corridor so that it is not limited by time and space. It's certainly a good thing that my ties with my partners have gotten stronger for this benefit. So what's next? I personally am becoming stronger than I was before the awakening, so much stronger that I can't say the same. The unique skill Great Sage has also evolved into the ultimate skill Raphael the King of Wisdom. If Benimaru and the others can evolve too, then what's there to hesitate about? It's just that. The phrase the genealogy of the soul is a cause for concern. I'm afraid it's the naming that connects the soul. Just naming a monster will allow it to evolve. Although I didn't even think much of it and messed with it, I now know that comes with a high degree of danger. It was because Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, analyzed the security for me that I could safely name them. If the naming fails, there is a good chance that all of my power will be taken away and I will die as a result. Even if I didn't fall this far, there was a chance that I wouldn't be able to regain my strength and the whole person would become weak. Personally, I have a convenient skill, such as the stomach bag of Beelzebub, the king of gluttony, to keep the excess mana created. If it's not enough, it seems like it's all on loan from Veldora, then it's all in the hands of Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom. Simply put, it's actually a foul play. Generally speaking, one has to use one's own magic element, and no one can simply name creatures, which is a matter of course. Even if it's Guy, it's the same. So few people have subordinates where souls are connected to each other. Those partners are irreplaceable to me. If it was me, I wouldn't want to use my partner as an experiment, but Master Raphael, the King of Wisdom, recommended it all so that there should be no danger. No, It's the direction I want to think in. Yet there was a sense of overly dangerous foreboding. And I'm also struggling with who to choose. There are a bunch of other issues that exist. If the benchmark was the amount of mana, then Sue should also be qualified. However, he was not chosen, so I had my doubts about the conditions of awakening. One wonders what the reason for this is. To evolve into a demon lord requires a dormancy to evolve. I'm not sure that's going to happen this time either, so I think it's best to be prepared to do it all over again. The most important thing is that the war is not over. The Empire's own army, which amounts to 700,000 troops, is invading our capital. It's best not to take any chances in such a crunch. So be it, my answer is no. Let's put this matter aside for now, when the dust of the war has settled. I ordered the Green Legion to stay on site and do recovery work, asked them to recover the undamaged chariots, plus the wreckage of the blimps. Gable and his group all seem to be out of action, so I'm going to have the Flying Dragon troops drive them to the Dwarven Kingdom and let them tune up slowly. Instead, I want the Blue Corps to meet up with the Green Legion. It was too late to come back in time for the showdown, so Benimaru gave instructions and told them. It's okay to come back in no hurry. Incidentally, Garzel asked if we needed reinforcements, but I told him no problem. Garzel and the rest are also still fighting. Even though the battle in the central part was over, there was still an Imperial army deployed on the side of Isthmus, which was adjacent to the Empire. The total number of troops is 60,000. According to Ghidorah, this is all a fake move by Yuki's forces. It's unclear how the situation will play out and definitely not to be taken lightly. It would be nice to remind Garzel that they should be careful here. Even if I didn't, they would be careful. We'll be responsible for a showdown with the Imperial army. By the time we get to this side, there is a consensus. In the meantime, although we won a big victory in the outpost battle, there is still a huge battle force on the enemy's side that cannot be taken lightly. It is an overwhelming disadvantage in terms of numbers. Although not to our advantage, the subordinates were highly motivated. Xion looked energetic and even said to my chagrin, "Those monsters, they only let themselves get the spotlight. I have to go out there and show everyone what it means to be really strong." "What the hell are you fighting against? I can't help but want to spout off like that. Aren't you my bodyguard? As soon as I pointed out the problem, she panicked and searched for her senses. It is also doubtful that it is too much to fight, I thought at the moment. The energetic people are not the only ones. My lord. Ultima came to show off. I heard you won in your first fight, right? I'd like to get a chance to make an appearance soon.
I think it's okay to go over there and say hello now, right?
Carrera rushed into the control room, red-faced, and shouted out the words. I've ordered her to stay with the 2nd Legion, so it turns out that she's been in touch with Ultima and the others on the communication network. I can't seem to hold myself back anymore after hearing my colleagues brag to her about their great exploits, but I'm troubled by the fact that I'd be acting without permission. Go say hello? The person who asked this back was Benimaru. Even knowing that Carrera's true identity was the primordial, his attitude remained unchanged. It looks like I really was overly worried. Yeah, that's it. Trying to say a little nuclear strike magic as a gift to them. I can't believe she's saying something so ridiculous with such a cute smile. It's the yellow primordial, it's a jump of ideas. No. Benimaru replied with a dumbfounded look. Miss Carrera? I want to ask you one thing, and that is to please wait for the order from above. It only makes sense to act and do those things when it counts. Carrera looked rather grumpy, but she didn't seem intent on disobeying Benimaru's orders. Geld also stepped in to reprimand, and she nodded reluctantly. Got it. I would love to show you my active performance, but I need to wait for the moment when I can make the most of it. I'll be good and wait for the right time. It's great that she can understand. Still seemingly willing to listen to Geld's advice, the two might turn out to be a more tacit partner than they thought. Ha 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 ha, Carrera, It's not the only way to make a big show of yourself. To be the sword of the Lord, so that we can glow. I know that, Miss Xion. I also seem to be a little too pushy. I'll let my mind cool down a bit and calm myself down. You're saying things like that of all people? I'm thinking in my mind. The words sounded good, but the thought that it was Xion who said them made it hard to accept. I mean, you, up until just now, were the one who wanted to mess around the most, weren't you? Although I almost got that complaint out, I held back at this point. It took a long time for everyone to reach a consensus, and it would be a bad idea to let it get stuck in a stalemate again. While watching the departing Carrera, I gave Xion white eyes. However, it's enough to see the fighting spirit. Our side also includes the Labyrinth Force and the Second Legion, which is always in reserve. It wasn't just the subordinates, it felt like even the soldiers at the very end of the line were very energetic. Probably hearing what I said, everyone was in high spirits and about to give it their all. Relatively speaking, there are 700,000 people on the Imperial side. It seems impossible to fight them in terms of numbers, but the point is, quality is more important than quantity. The other side should also have a master lurking, but we still have the ace of the maze on our side. The key to winning or losing is in the maze. Please, Veldora and Ramirez. No problem. Just leave it to us. Just say it. With us, you won't have to worry about fighting anyone. Hearing such a powerful response made me feel like I was in the right place. The most important thing is how to avoid casualties. To do so, luring the enemy's army into the maze was the best course of action. If we were in a maze, there would be no attrition in our army. Not only that, but the magical creatures within the maze can also join the battle and can make up the unfavorable gap in numbers in one fell swoop. If even the lower-order magical creatures were counted together, the total number should reach hundreds of thousands. Next we'll see how much the Empire believes in Yuki's rhetoric, isn't that right? I think it's the other way around. It's precisely because this guy isn't trustworthy that he was able to successfully induce and make the Empire suspect him, isn't it? I see. It does make sense. Presumably, it's like Benimaru said. If Yuki is treated as an enemy, he is a very tricky opponent. For the time being we are only joining forces with him, but to treat this man as one of our own is really not to be trusted. Maybe the Empire side thinks so too. It would be more reassuring to have them lurking among the enemy than to have those suspicious elements join us in the fight. Xion unexpectedly hit it. This way you don't have to worry about being betrayed, and you don't have to spare your mind to deal with it. As such, Benimaru agreed. In this regard, the Empire must not have fully regarded Yuki as one of its own. There should be vigilance and suspicion of what he says. By analogy, there are 60,000 troops deployed in front of the eastern metropolis of Isthmus in Dworgen, and there is no telling how they will act. It is likely that the Empire will send troops there to clean up the mess, and also to speak to Garzel and tell them to be on the alert. If it is King Garzel, there is no need to worry about him in this regard. But nothing is more problematic than our untrustworthy personnel. If it was me, I would have gone over and disposed of them first. I also told King Garzel about Yuki. As Benimaru said, I don't need to worry about it, so I'm sure the other party will take every measure. We should be worried about the Imperial Army. They are currently on the offensive, intending to surround us from all sides. There was only a huge door left on the ground, and while that made it unnecessary to panic, I couldn't help but feel nervous. There was nothing more worrying than the fear that they would overtake the Jura Tempest Federation and attack the new kingdom that Yume had established, Farminas. Although there were two major forces over there, Razin and Grucius, that country didn't have any spare energy for a major war. Even if we are providing assistance, there are reforms underway, and it is hoped now that we can avoid turning the place into a battlefield. Of course, if that happens, we will also send additional reinforcements, but the battle will become more complicated. Although it has not turned out that way for the time being, you can rest assured that it will not be taken lightly. If the Empire didn't believe Yuki's words and went directly through this land towards that direction of the Bloomant Kingdom, then Geld and the rest would attack from behind the Imperial army. Even if it is possible to send the entire Second Legion through my teleportation, they will still be fighting on the ground at that time. There would be far fewer reinforcements from the labyrinth, and it was conceivably going to be a harsh battle. If one went inside the labyrinth to collect volunteers, one should be able to recruit a considerable number of people. If you say so, we can't bring out all the magical creatures that don't have a will, and the number of reinforcements will be small. That said, if we were to fight on the ground, there would be no way to cover us on the other side of the maze, and we would have to be prepared to suffer a lot of damage. The ideal development is for the enemy to put the target on the maze. The same is true of the battle plan proposed by Benimaru. The one with the highest success rate and security is the maze offensive and defensive battle. If it evolves into a ground war, the vantage point that only exists within the maze is gone. We must go head-to-head and fight on even terms. In fact, this is a matter of course. How you can build a situation in our favor in wartime is the key to winning or losing. Although using a maze even I find despicable, as long as I can beat it. So if you can, hopefully the maze will become the main battlefield. Even when switching to ground combat, the basic approach is the same. The primary goal is to find out who is the master buried on the enemy's side. Just as the previous battle had sent the Green Legion as bait, that job would go to Geld's Legion this time. Benimaru's battle plan was based on a certain objective. All for the sake of protecting me as the king. I cherish those partners, the same, or even more so, and I always feel that Benimaru puts me first. I hope they don't force themselves, but Benimaru has more detailed insight on this part than I do, who knows nothing about tactics. Even in the fight just now, looking at the results alone would reveal that the damage suffered was minimal. Since everything is in Benimaru's hands, all I have to do is wait patiently. In addition to that, I want to continue to work quietly in order to make everyone feel more at ease and more willing to rely on me. To facilitate the Imperial invasion, we prepared a gate on the ground, but that was perhaps a little too deliberate. I was a little worried about whether the other person would suspect that it was a trap, and I ended up worrying too much. I don't know if my wish was granted, but as far as the conclusion is concerned, the subsequent developments were as I had hoped. The enemy has deployed in front of the gates on the ground. The communications officer came to report to us. The large screen shows the neatly arranged Imperial General soldiers. Its information is obtained through the Argos, so I don't think there's any mistake, and Sue's men are also watching, so there's no need to worry about being deceived by illusions or other tricks. It looks like the Imperial army has really taken the bait. The other side does not seem to want to continue to hide, and all 700,000 troops have shown up. I guess on the one hand they are trying to scare us, but it means nothing to us. We have no intention of surrendering at all. While there is the possibility of escape, there is absolutely no submission to the Empire. Plus everything is in ideal condition. It's a win. I couldn't help but mutter. Right. We will win. Benimaru replied with morale. In fact, by this time it was already certain that tactically we had won. Enter the maze and we will be unscathed, and with some more time we will surely win. Then, as long as there is no overpowering person above the Demon Lord, there will be no flip-flop to take advantage of. It's a good thing some greedy fool was drawn to the maze. Indeed. Originally I was going to say that the bait spilled by Lord Raimuru was too obvious, and it was great to smoothly get the opponent on the hook. Yeah. It looks like Ghidorah has got things in order. For the moment the enemy has given us a glimpse of them. Once the battle power is dispersed, the rest of the unease is not knowing where the master is hiding. Spreading the war effort was basically a foolish act, but this time the other side all came together and kind of helped. It seemed like they were going to invade the maze in order, so the question would only be how much combat power the other side would actually stay on the ground. In any case, it would be strategically unwise for the Empire to pass through our doors. If they just blocked the door on the ground like that and went straight to the west, there would be trouble. That's true. 100,000 of the 700,000 would be enough to surround. Moreover, if the remaining armies were to march on the western countries, they would be able to cut off their worries. By the way, if that's the case, we'll be able to get in and out from other locations. However, places that are blocked off by techniques such as fixed space-type boundaries cannot open the entrance or exit, so they can only open the door to places where they have been to some extent. Realistically, if we can unseal the entrance and exit to the spirit realm, which is Ramiri's lair, we can get in and out from there. Only in this way, we're locked in a maze. He would have to watch the western countries being ravaged, and he would have to send troops even if he barely could. The result is to go to ground combat. In the end, you'll have to face off against your opponent, but until then, cut the enemy's battle strength as much as possible. Don't you have to warn those people on the ground? If it's to incite them to anger, they'll probably be outraged to go to war, won't they? At this point, Veldora and Ramirez made this observation. These comments are worth listening to, but with no warning. Oh? What's the reason? You know that, don't you? There are words above the door. To hear you put it that way, it does. In fact, there is an engraved message at the gate on the ground. The weak have no right to pass through this door. I wonder how the enemy will react. I wonder how my opponent will act when I see that. I think I'd feel the heat and rush in. It's just that they'll let the men go first. Benimaru might actually do that. He's the kind of guy who still rushes in knowing there's a trap. I wouldn't care. Because I'm strong. Yes, again, not asking Veldora. My words would be like this. If Beretta had said he wanted to go anyway, I probably would have thought there was nothing I could do with him and gone along. Ramirez, don't force it if you're afraid. Beretta, who was named by me, is laughing bitterly. Lord Rimuru is merciful, and there can be no complaint about someone being stupid enough to ignore your warning, no matter what happens in the end. I'm tempted to ask, why are you so happy? But like Diablo said, I would write those words on the one hand and warn them on the other, so if anyone is too cowardly to walk through the door, he is not qualified to go to war. We will destroy them without mercy, and must show them how foolish it is to be hostile to Lord Rimuru. Miss Shion, if you say something like that, won't you end up in a fight? Even Geld was smiling darkly, wishing she had thought a little before speaking. Despite saying so, the other subordinates actually thought very similarly to her. People were really energetic and looked energetic as they talked to me about giving me a bigger victory. Testarossa and the others' soul collection was dedicated to me, and for some reason, others who had learned of it were planning to paint gourds as well. Testarossa, supposedly of the demon race, seems to enjoy the emotional residue that attaches itself to the soul. I've heard that there are all kinds of ways to eat, but her favorite is to see the look on a face when they're cramping up from fear. That's what Testarossa said. That smiley face was a little scary at the time. If it was before I was reincarnated, I might have been scared, but now I just think, that's how it is. The demon race didn't matter. What were the other demons doing that for?
Even if it's okay to collect souls and not know what can be done.
It should be said that even I was just learning about it for the first time, and it even made me wonder why they were racing like this. It's probably a trophy or something, but I don't really want it. That's 700,000 people. If I did get all these people's souls, I could awaken 7 other people. Horrible to think of myself as naturally emerging from this. No. In order to avoid turning my mind into a demon, I'll have to get in a good mood to deal with it. After renewing my resolve, I turned my eyes to the big screen. Looks like they're out in force. There, the Imperial soldiers are reflected in full gear. They didn't look frightened at all and began to barge in the door as if nothing had happened. Everything is going according to plan. If more than half the people break in, it will be much easier for us after that. When I muttered these words, Benimaru smiled arrogantly. We will not spare a single soldier. Depending on the situation, I will also strike. Geld nodded as he listened. My second corps can actually send out about 17,000 men. We are at a disadvantage in terms of numbers alone, but we are not at a loss. Let's change the terrain and seal off the enemy's army. So reliable. If the inside is completely burned with my flame again, then only the strong ones worth fighting will remain. On that note, I suppose Miss Carrera will help as well. She seemed eager to make a scene from a moment ago, and would have been happy to play to her strengths. The power of the primordials is unquestionable. But I won't lose to her. Ouch, ouch, ouch. This conversation sounded very different from what I expected to hear. Benimaru and Geld both talk with a win in mind. Personally, I'm a little worried too. They're really hoity-toity. It was only natural to count Carrera among the warriors, and to feel no fear or politeness towards the primordials. Benimaru, you're too cunning. Since we're going to fight a war of annihilation, we should put me on the field. In the end, even Xion followed suit and volunteered. It looks like she forgot she was my bodyguard again, but the control room is in the safest place. The selling point of this unit is the resistance to beatings. It would be a pity to leave them to cool off on the side, if we had to fight on the ground, which I intended to do. If Xion had that intention, I could have given the order to attack. Calm down, Xion. Be the first to see how the enemy will act. Depending on the situation, it may also be possible to ask you to go out. Anyway, let's placate her with these words for now. Kufa-fu-fa-fu. Speaking of Lord Raimuru's bodyguard, having me alone will suffice. Even Diablo had said so. If anything happened, just call Testarossa and the girls back. They can teleport and come in an instant. Since Lord Raimuru has said so, all right. I'll ask you to strike at that time too, Xion. Benimaru, just leave it to me. With a full smile on her face, Xion thanked Benimaru. Why is this girl so into combat? It's a little hard for me to understand. But since she was so happy in person, let's do that. That follows. Raimuru, I'm going to get ready. I'm coming too. To show them the horrors of the maze. You can rest easy with me as your last line of defense. Then if you'll excuse me, Lord Raimuru. Looking combative and full of energy, Veldora and Ramirez leave the control room. Beretta followed suit and the control room returned to silence. In Veldora's opinion, this was his first job as a labyrinth master. It's not sure if he's actually going to make an appearance, but that look feels so reliable just looking at it. Then let's go and see what the enemy is capable of. Watching everyone walk through the door one by one, I said something very Demon Lord-esque. The group nodded. As such, we are about to face off against a total of 700,000 Imperial troops. When the leader of the Mecha Legion, Calgurio, saw that the situation was developing as expected, he secretly snickered. He looked at his army with great confidence. A number of elite men were passing through the gate one by one. Ahead lies the labyrinth that will bring great wealth to Calgurio. I guess the monsters are now in a panic because of the unexpected presence of an army. They were able to do so thanks to their careful planning and the strength of the soldiers and generals who could match. He had consulted with those staff officers several times about the invasion route, deliberately allowing the magic chariot division to attack from the front so as to be conspicuous. In addition to that, if the evil dragon Veldora shows up to repel him, they also send 100 blimps of the Killer Air Combat Air Corps. It was also the job of the Air Combat Flying Corps to transport the Legion of Warcraft led by Gladim to the west, yet they would fly over the sea and the journey was bound to be safe. He didn't think the blimp needed the war effort, so Calgurio had to ask for resupply support. It was his intention to put an end to the duties of the blimps by having all 300 of them go out while carrying military supplies. So the battle was all focused on fighting against Veldora. As for the hundreds of airships sent to the Great Forest of Jura, they were all fully prepared and carried the most powerful magicians. It was a sure thing that even if they had to take cover, Calgurio thought that these forces alone could completely suppress the whole West. If Gladim and the others had attacked the capital of Ingratia, they would have put an end to this war in one fell swoop. By waging war on two fronts at once like this, Calgurio's mech legions were responsible for a great deal in comparison. This means a lucrative campaign once successful. In this way, his power within the empire will rise even higher. Thinking about this side, Calgurio laughed until his mouth was full. As for the outline of the battle plan, he will let the Magic Chariot Division invade in a conspicuous way, and once the enemy takes the bait, this time the team led by Calgurio will appear in full force, followed by an attack on the base of the Demon Lord Raimoru. According to the intelligence obtained beforehand, the metropolis ruled by the Demon Lord seemed to have been isolated into the maze. He had originally wondered how that was possible, but it was all true. What remained on the ground was a single door to the maze. That being the case, all they had to do was surround this door and let the enemy stick their wings in it. If you disrupt the space around you, you will be sealed with the teleportation magic. This will allow for a complete blockade. The problem of the combat power of the armed power, Dworgen, is greater. The heroic King Garzel is not to be underestimated, and the Dwarven soldiers are notoriously tough. It's not a lie that the Millennium Undefeated would die a horrible death if they were underestimated. However, we can't lose. There are up to 2,000 magic chariots here, so if they sacrifice the antiques of the old days, they are no match for us at all. The armed power of Dworgen remains neutral, but this is not at all important in the eyes of the Empire. I've only let them go because I thought it was tricky, but since I knew my own army would win, I didn't have to. Magic and science. The fusion of the two creates the strongest legion, with a whole new way of fighting as a foundation. That's the Mecha Legion led by Calgurio. Garzel is indeed a hero, but he alone can't do anything. Of course, it's common sense that the quality of the force is more likely to change the battlefield than the number of men. Calgurio knew how destructive the chariot cannon could be, and fighting with swords and magic was just an outdated way of fighting in his eyes. Those dwarves would just have to prepare old equipment that couldn't keep up with the times and certainly couldn't imagine how capable the legions of the new era were. By the time they know, it will be too late. The dwarves were just waiting to be unilaterally ravaged. But these ideas are fundamentally wrong, except that at this point the Calgurio has no way of knowing. Lucky along the way, Calgurio was sure he would be victorious, and could not have imagined what eventuality would defeat him to the enemy. Then came the report that had been awaited from the very beginning. The enemy sent an emissary to visit, and bargaining broke down. They will go straight to belligerence. Upon receiving this report, the Calgurios marched in according to the intended plan and have now suppressed the land that looked like the base of the Demon Lord Raimoru. Calgurio waited there leisurely and began to think about the ministry. It might be a bit of a shame to let Geist get Garzel's head, but the minions won't come after me until they give me something sweet to eat. There's no way around that. That said, Lieutenant General Geist and Major General Farragut, who were among the best under Calgurio's men, were among the best. Sure to echo his expectations, Calgurio was convinced. Although both Geist and Farragut were now dead, it was too much for Calgurio to detect. By the way, hasn't Geist contacted us yet? Yes. Ever since Lieutenant General Geist returned they had begun to engage the enemy and had been unable to make contact since. I think it's about time we got a look at the situation. After all, it's impossible for them to get into a bitter fight and not contact us, isn't that too lazy? Yes, I'm not sure. Forget it. So, what's going on over at Farragut? It seems like Geist was too excited to go to war for so long. Calgurio thought he saw a big victory coming, so he focused all his attention on the battlefield. That being the case, let's ask Farragut about it. If it was him, he would currently be looking gracefully at the battle from the air. In other words, he should bring the right information. However, the liaison officer in charge of liaising with Farragut was not quite right. He was sweating furiously and was desperately trying to make contact with the other man. What's going on? The good mood was doused with cold water, and Calgurio stood up in displeasure. The tone of the words was a bit harsh. Perhaps anxious about the relationship, the intelligence general replied in a panic. Report from Major General Farragut that he's encountered a suspected Veldora. We'll report back when it's confirmed, but... There was no further contact after that. No further contact at all after the first report. According to the communication magic instructor underneath them, the magic element of the Jura Great Forest was very strong, and under normal circumstances, it could easily obstruct the communication numinous wave. Hearing him say that, Calgurio realized that the magical element seemed to be really thick, and knew why that was. After all, this forest was created by the nemesis, Veldora. And this is the land of the Demon Lord. Let's just say that explanation makes sense. Calgurio didn't think it would be useful to worry about it, so he didn't intend to go into detail. There should be no time to report if one is fighting the other. And as the communication magic instructor said, the surrounding magical concentration will have an effect, and there's a good chance that the magic communication won't get through. And nowadays, if that Veldora was actually on the battlefield, it would be impossible to communicate through magic. After a rational explanation in this direction, Calgurio immediately changed the direction of his thinking. Then just wait for them to bring good news. If they did run into Veldora, Geist and Farragut certainly couldn't contact us. That being the case, we can't afford to lose. Come on down to the maze. Geist and Side had given a huge battle force, and this sense of reassurance did not make Calgurio feel that they would lose the battle. He believed that such a thing as defeat could never happen and had long ago eliminated that possibility. Not only that, but it even felt right to his advantage. Now that Farragut met Veldora, all that's left in the maze is the Demon Lord. He heard that the 4 heavenly kings under him are also tricky, but it's not enough to watch against the elite of the Mechatronics Transformation Corps. Without the slightest confusion, Calgurio decided to set his mind on the maze before him. The spot where Calgurio was staying was a large open field. Big enough to stuff an entire metropolis. There was a gate towering over the central area, which was the junction to the maze. Magic probing also revealed no harmful substances such as traps. There was only one door there, just waiting for Calgurio and the others to come and challenge them. There was a phrase written on the gate, "The weak have no right to pass through it," and Calgurio thought it proved he had thought it right. Hide everything for fear of being plundered by us. It's obviously magic and a little clever, isn't it? Whichever country it is rightfully afraid of looting operations in the name of dispatching supplies on the spot. Seriously, not being able to get food is a major annoyance. The Empire had a huge army, which was undoubtedly a big pain in the ass for them. He admits it's also a tactically effective means to an end. But you guys are so naive. Calgurio was laughing at the shallow intelligence of the demon creature. The soldiers underwent intensive surgery from otherworldly science and magic, and were able to do their best even if they didn't eat or drink for a week. The food they carry focuses on energy balance, and one will supply the energy needed to be active throughout the day. Each person carries 20 of each, and the consumption so far is being calculated. They had already distributed enough for them to consume, and they could continue to fight even without robbing the city of its food, which was foolproof. Small, lightweight carrying food, but also made as simple as possible for the supply station. Even the most problematic drinking water can be made by magic. That way everything will be fine. According to their calculations, those elite soldiers would be able to move within the maze for 27 days. One of the greatest weaknesses in the conduct of military operations by the great armies was the interruption of the sources of supplies, on which the other side seemed to be pinning its hopes, but Calgurio must say they were naive. Think you can win by cutting off our supplies? It's stupid. Calgurio acted like he was laughing at their stupidity, and one of the staff officers followed suit. The man was of noble birth and wanted to follow Calgurio for oil. Ha 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 ha, Lord Kalgurio. Don't make them sound so sad. That demon Lord Rimuru made a mistake right from the start. Our proud mech-modified regiment sends its strongest assassin, the evil dragon Veldora, to take on the bait. By the time they found out, they were already surrounded by so many heroes. Other staff officers jumped in to echo the sentiment. But there's no reason to think so. It's bait, but it's a big army. Exactly. I can understand that. After listening to these staff officers' conversations, Kalgurio's mood became good. Ha! You think you're a demon lord, but that's not all. You must be shrinking into a ball in the depths of the maze right now. Besides mocking the demon lord's short-sightedness, Kalgurio was sure that their expedition would be successful. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's how it is. The next thing we need to do is drag the demon lord to Lord Kalgurio and cut off his head. That way, Lord Kalgurio will become a hero for killing the demon lord. Staff officers of noble birth began to tout Kalgurio. That wouldn't be so bad, thought Kalgurio. The first step is to attack this maze and establish roots here. Military positions were then constructed, and the west was taken advantage of. If they didn't act fast, Gladim, who led the Warcraft Legion, would ravage the western nations from the north. Seriously, Kalgurio would love to get through the great forest of Jura before then, but he used it without panic. It is true that the number of feats they could have erected would have been reduced, but that would have been a mere 90 cents. The Empire's long-held wish, to crush the storm dragon, Veldora. If such a great feat is achieved, the other feats are not worth mentioning at all. On top of that, if one could also hand over the head of the demon Lord Rimuru, Kalgurio would surely be chosen as the one who would take the most credit. Like Kalgurio, the staffers seemed convinced that they would win. After all, they had an army of 700,000. Seeing such a majestic sight, no one could have imagined that they would be defeated in battle. Let's start the border on this land and make it a camp. Then send troops there in order. Everyone, get up and tackle the maze. Leave it to us. Then proceed as planned. No objections were raised. After all, the situation is not urgent. Oppose it without deliberately risking upsetting the other party. As for the glory to be gained by marching into the west, let it be given to Gladim. Everyone in the room had that consensus. It's more about something else these days. Most were able to get substantial gold and silver treasures within the labyrinth, which heightened their interest. The lust in the hearts of these people wins. All in all, they were going to flood this maze with manned tactics and then plunder it all, a pure and simple battle plan. The fact that no one has objected to this battle plan proves that they have all been blinded by the interests at hand. It is because they are sure they will win that Kalgurio and others openly accept their desires. They were convinced that their share of the treasure in the labyrinth would make them a fortune. With that, Operation Maze Raid began. Immediately following, the poor people who knew nothing about it walked happily down the ladder that they never would have a chance to climb again. The labyrinth is a maze of people. Even if the opponent doesn't follow the rules, it's just that. The safety locks have been disengaged. The real posture of the labyrinth, which no one has ever experienced, awaits them just ahead. It is hell on earth. The current location is one of the deepest rooms of the maze. There was a secret conference room there that even Rimuru didn't know about. The masters within the labyrinth then gathered in this vast hall. On weekdays, the members who appear here do not gather. And they'll be there in full force like this, so imagine how important this discussion topic is. The leader is Beretta, the labyrinth coordinator, who is the adjutant and agent of Ramirez. There are 4 dragon kings of all kinds. There was the Flame Dragon King, the Ice and Snow Dragon King, the Gale Dragon King, and the Earth-Shattering Dragon King, each occupying 4 corners of the hall. And in the middle of the hall, in front of the ebony round table, sat those who were the floor guardian of the 90th floor, the 9-tailed beast Kumara, the floor guardian of the 80th floor, the bug emperor Zijin, Apito, the Bug Queen, the 79th level of the Domain Guardian. The Floor Guardian of the 70th floor, Adalman, the Immortal King. The Vanguard of the 70th level, Albert Paladin of the Dead. They are what people call the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth, Labyrinth 10. There were also 3 other people who looked abrupt. Next to Adalman was an old man with a keen eye. He was Ghidorah. To accompany the end seat were the Floor Guardians of the 50th floor, Gozu and Mezu, knowing that they looked out of place among these strong men, so they didn't dare to be too high profile when they came to participate. That being said, the 2 of them always feel like they can win no matter what kind of opponent they meet. However, after actually witnessing people standing on top of each other, they realized the difference between them. That's why they're sitting on pins and needles. There was another reason why they didn't dare to be too unbridled, and that was that those present and gathered often argued about who was the strongest. Nowadays, they were also in a dark tide with each other, making one feel as if the space was distorted by an unusual pressure. Even though Ghidorah was new to the scene, he was still not looking good in this battle. Seeing this scene, Gozu and Mezu realized how much they weighed. Those guys are the real rabble-rousers, there's no way they can beat these guys. Being able to make people like Gozu, who had been fighting for 100 years, think like that, Ghidorah was not too simple either. Although Beretta and those Dragon Kings didn't join the scramble, they weren't going to stop it either. The attitude from beginning to end says let them be. While this is not the reason, the debate over who is the strongest among the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth is arguably growing stronger. The fact that Adalman was praised to Rimuru face and elevated to the next floor is still fresh in his mind. After that, everyone's spirits were high. Each person believes that he or she can be of greater help, and the idea is reinforced by the fact that none of the floor guardians below the comparison have a chance to make an appearance. They want a chance to make a difference. As for newcomer Ghidorah, he is full of blood and wants to help his friend Adalman. If there was a waking good showing here, he thought to himself, that would really solidify his position. Adalman is now more eager to fight for the Rimuru he believes in than he was before, and wants to improve his status if he can. Thus the other floor guardians are an eyesore. Although not the enemy, they felt in the way. Albert followed Adalman, in addition to secretly having ambitions to enhance his feats and make a name for himself. I didn't expect him to be very intentional. Apito is the same female as Kumara, and their relationship is very sinister. Especially the 9-tailed Kumara, who was responsible for guarding the deep 90th floor. Thus the chances of appearances are almost equal to 0. Apito had a good showing against those paladins, and Kumara was jealous of her and therefore particularly easy to work against, all out of a heart that wanted to work against the other. Apito, on the other hand, was very unconvinced and was completely unwilling to give up half a step in the face of Kumara. So these 2 are at each other's throats all day long. Zijin always looks like he's staying out of the way, but he's actually the top guy in the maze. Everyone was jealous of him. He hoped, or didn't hope, that he would be caught up in the dispute. And just like that, the masters within the maze have a nasty relationship. But to say whether they hate each other to the core, they really don't. In fact, they're just trying to prove they're the best, and not trying to fight their opponents off. Respect each other despite being jealous. Just because they will fight doesn't mean they hate their opponent. Both consider each other to be good opponents for each other's cutting. Such a gathering of them together, but quiet to the point of surprise at the moment. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the still empty main seat of the round table. Look at the seat that belonged to the king of the labyrinth, Veldora, and to the great Ramirez who created it. 2 hours had passed since they had been summoned. It was all still noisy just now, and Beretta's presence silenced everyone. In a short time, Lord Veldora and Lady Ramirez will be visiting. Everyone has to wait quietly. With that said, Beretta sat down in his seat. "Chief, may I ask a question?" Beretta nodded when he heard 9-tailed Kumara ask that. "This time we'll be here because..." "You should all have guessed that." Some fools have invaded this maze, and the purpose of this time is to consult with everyone to see how to defeat them." Upon hearing this, everyone shut up. They've all heard about the current situation, too. Although they hadn't heard the purpose of the meeting that brought everyone together, they could almost guess the main points. Therefore, although the big moves had held each other back before, now, when they heard that the Imperial army had invaded the labyrinth, they were more in the same mood than a competitive heart. What would it mean to make an enemy of the labyrinth? To make sure those people understand that, let's all work together, that was their mindset. The scene is filled with breathless tension, followed by "Yeah ho ho ho. Everyone, welcome to the party." The atmosphere in the hall heated up in one breath because of the relationship between Ramirez and Veldora's debut. Seeing such an atmosphere, Ramirez was happy and addressed the group in a serious tone that she wouldn't normally have. "We haven't had a crisis of this magnitude since the opening of this maze. That's why I want to hear from everyone." As soon as this was said, everyone started meeting. The first person to react was the nine-tailed Kumara. Gee, that goes without saying. It seemed that she had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and was about to say what she thought when Apito snatched up the conversation. "Just shoot to kill." Kumara began to glare at Apito with each other. "You've got a chance to appear on my floor this time, haven't you? Apito and those paladins should be playing satisfied these days, right? What's that supposed to mean? If it's Hinata-sama, it's not bad. A paladin is too weak to be an opponent, but it makes me feel even more bored." There was another wave of tension in the venue. "I didn't think it would be Veldora who came out to play Roundup." Kwahahaha. Everyone, stop arguing. And everyone can rest assured. This time there's a chance to prepare everyone for the battle on the field. According to what I've heard, the guys seem to think the maze is only 60 levels at most. Despite our outward propaganda that the maze has 100 layers, they don't believe it.
Do people think it's okay to be so stupid?
Everyone was like, no. Veldora also hummed and nodded. It's fun to make a scene with them, but it's a pain in the ass. Yes, that's it. Just like Master had just said, waiting for them to attack to the 50th level was really troublesome. Not only is it troublesome for us, but for each other as well. There are about 700,000 people crowded out there right now. Rimuru wants us to lure as many people as possible into the labyrinth. If they're all crammed in by the entrance, it'll take time, won't it? The sheer number of enemies is also a problem. So we intend to distribute the enemy forces separately from the beginning, sending 1,000 men to each floor. Fortunately, the Empire's general soldiers were disciplined and everyone lined up for action. Smoothly entering the maze, the ranks were not messed up, but that still took time, of course. If the man in front starts fighting the man, that line of movement will be broken. In this way, one has no idea how long it would take to get everyone into the maze. If you're lucky enough to draw straws, you might be able to run into some serious enemies. Ho ho ho. Maybe there was someone inside who would threaten Rimuru's life, the same guy Benimaru was looking for. But that might be his over-worrying, but then again, just finding out who this person is would be a big help. Everyone's eyes changed when they heard Ramirez say that to Veldora. To be one of the 4 heavenly kings under Rimuru, that was a vision for the men in charge of the maze. One of them, Benimaru, is also Rimuru's right-hand man and is his best friend. People want to go up against him one day and see. No, his best friend is me, that's what Veldora would think. But everyone didn't let that out of their mouths, and the live conversation went smoothly. That means, everyone has a chance, right? If that's the case, I'm fine with that. As soon as he heard this, Apito and Kumara instantly showed signs of reconciliation. Others have their own ambitions in mind, and everyone is full of fighting spirit. So if someone comes into their own dominion, we can all do as we please. Hearing a Dalman ask that, Ramirez nodded sharply and said, that's it. This became the key message, and the members of the maze became more serious again. Ramirez went on to explain, They're also invading one by one at the moment, so all in all we'll put them in order starting with the 40th floor. Whenever the number reaches 1,000, drop down a floor and follow this pace. Gozu and the others will assign other tasks and explain later. The jealous eyes of everyone on the scene were focused on Gozu and Mezu, causing those two to tremble with nervousness. Their bodies shrank even more than just now, desperately trying to pass. Instead of falling into this situation, it would be better to fight the foolish invaders, which would be 1,000 times better, the mood of both men. Also not bothering with such a Gozu and the others, Ramirez continued to illustrate. That's about it, we're going to skillfully disperse the enemy on all floors. The last 40 to 50 tiers would be 100,000 people. The 51st to 60th floor is also 100,000 people. 61 to 70 layers of 100,000. 71 floors to 80 floors and 100,000 81 levels to 90, 100,000, and then probably let each Dragon King deal with 10,000 people. If someone still keeps breaking in, it will divide them up to the upper floors. The maximum number of people accepted at one time was targeted at 540,000. Ramirez said she wanted a minimum of 350,000 as well. Finally, she would address the most important matters. One more thing not to be forgotten, and only this time, we are going to change the rules inside the maze. Each room with dragons will expand to 10 times the normal size, and we'll also let the floors swap and fall into the room with dragons as soon as we break through the 90th floor. But that's not the point. The real point is that the conditions for breaking the barrier change. Ramirez flapped her wings and flew around, one side for emphasis. So what exactly were the conditions changed to? First of all, once you get through the door this time, you can't get out if you don't break it. To break through would mean having to defeat Veldora, and that would really be a showdown with the whole army out in force. On top of that, the challenge to Veldora was conditional on collecting the 10 keys that the 10 lords of the labyrinth had dropped. That is, even if some people started off from the 80 floors, they still had to go back to the upper floors to beat down 10 lords of the labyrinth. Hearing this, a satisfied expression appeared on all 10 of their faces. The Dragon Kings in the four corners of the hall chattered in small voices. If so, it seems an equal opportunity. That sounds about right. There can also be more prey than whoever hunts it. Sparks began to flare up among the group. I hope I have a match to make me swing my sword seriously. Can't be too arrogant, Albert. We just have to figure out how to annihilate the enemies of God. There is a fight between the master and servant that begins to burn. There are also people who have been meditating quietly. The group seemed to be full of energy in the face of the upcoming battle. Faced with such a labyrinth of 10 masters, the chief, Beretta, identified as the chief of the 10 lords of the labyrinth, opened his mouth. By the way, Lord Ramirez, it's been a matter of asking you before. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Rimuru allowed it too, let's observe it this time. Thank you. So, after conferring with Ramirez over something, Beretta stood up and looked around the labyrinth lords. Ladies and gentlemen, Lord Ramirez has assigned me the role of labyrinth coordinator. I'm also a labyrinth lord, but Beretta personally felt that becoming chief of the 10 lords of the labyrinth was just a side hustle. It takes 10 people to put together a good-sounding name, so Beretta joined the 10 just to put together the numbers. And the title also reflects the casual nature of the things that Ramirez does, changing again and again. It's not like he's willing to do it. As for his colleague, Thraney, though in the same position as himself, Ramirez held her in high regard. The reasoning was that she wouldn't scold Ramirez just yet, but Beretta felt it was too much to take. That being said, Thraney still does what he does. She seems to have gotten the promise of Ramirez to go somewhere without Beretta's knowledge. It was so disturbing, Beretta sighed quietly at the thought of it. All in all, he was currently forced to rank among the maze's 10 lords of the labyrinth in order to make up his numbers. Beretta himself didn't want that, so he was keen to cede the position of the Labyrinth 10 chief to someone else. Now the opportunity he had been waiting for had finally come. I want to cede my place to the man who made the war. The Labyrinth Lord's eyes seemed to light up for a moment, and all their eyes changed. Even Gozu and Mezu were no exception, and began to hold ambitions that were not commensurate with their status, thinking that perhaps they could join the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth. Only that ambition went up in smoke with Beretta's next words. As for my share in this war as a Labyrinth Lord, I will leave it to His Excellency Ghidorah over there for the time being. He has been recommended by Lord Adalman as having considerable strength, and his knowledge is recognized not only by me but also by Lady Ramirez. Ghidorah, who was suddenly named, was surprised but unfazed. He hadn't lived this long and was used to such scenes. Here we go. The time of this old man has come. If I had taken advantage of this opportunity to make a splash, I wouldn't be a temporary replacement. Ghidorah is always positive. How else can there be a way to quickly get a head start and navigate between countries? And Ghidorah was also well aware of his own abilities, relying on his accurate vision to see through the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth. Some of them were not as good as themselves, or not on a par with him, and there were even some masters among the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth who were not comparable to him. There was absolutely no way he could ignore these over-the-top strongmen and think of himself as the first. Because he was well aware of this, Ghidorah's goal was limited to joining the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth. Well, then, I'll take that as a compliment. Will you take it? That does me a favor, said Ghidorah. Just at this moment, Ghidorah and Beretta agreed on what was at stake. So much so that, though only temporarily, on the eve of the upcoming battle with the Empire, they had a personnel change. Beretta emerges from the 10 Lords of the Labyrinth, and Ghidorah joins to become one of them. Ghidorah was willing to accept, and I was happy. Ask Ghidorah to take charge of the 60 floors. You will do well to enslave the Colossus, the Floor Guardian Colossus. Things were quickly finalized. In this regard too, Ramirez had talked to Rimuru, and they had long since decided to try Ghidorah. Ghidorah was usually there to assist in the research work of Ramirez, so he agreed without a second word. The other party was willing to send him the Floor Guardian statue, which was a great request from his point of view. In that case, let's get a nickname for Ghidorah, too. Ah, that's right, Ghidorah. Do you have a nickname you want? Suddenly being asked so, Ghidorah was at a loss for a moment as to how to react. This. Ghidorah personally doesn't think that's very important. The Imperial Army had also invaded, and now it was best to start defending quickly. He also thought that even if he didn't say it, everyone knew it by heart. But that doesn't seem like much of an issue to the top people, and even at times like this the attitude is as usual. Frustrating. His Majesty Rudra was already very good, and these people were no match for him. No, since the other party is a storm dragon and a labyrinth fairy, that's a natural reaction too. Ghidorah was impressed. Ghidorah, a man with no connection to loyalty, could nevertheless be said to harbor a sense of awe for both Veldora and Ramirez, plus Rimuru, who could use both of them deftly. Should we name him the Magic Guide? Master, I think that sounds cool. Right? I'm cool when I'm supposed to be cool, Kwahahaha. How could Ghidorah herself dare to have an opinion? That's the way it is. Thought it was all largely explained, he didn't realize that it seemed like there was something else Ramirez had to say. That's right, I remember. Gozu and Mezu also have important missions. Hearing that, being nervous about not knowing what kind of task they would be assigned, Gozu the whole of them jumped up. So, then, what are we responsible for? What's the best thing to do? The two men inquired tremulously. Not taking such a reaction to heart, Ramirez ordered it. Go to the 30th floor and stand by so that you can summon the monsters of the passers-by over there. If anyone escapes, get rid of them.
The location of the resurrection with the bracelet is also arranged on the 30th floor, so it's okay to accidentally kill the wrong person.
You've got to work hard. She sounded like she could do it as if it was a matter of course. Gozu and Mezu too could only accept it. It's not that they don't want to do it, it's that the unease in their hearts is greater. Worried if they didn't get it right this time, they would be cut off. If they play hard, they'll probably be cut from this honor-filled post. To avoid that kind of thing, they had to cheer well, and Gozu and Mezu looked at each other and nodded. The 30th level of the maze, the floor guardian, is a B+ level ogre king and 5 of his men. They will obey the orders of the A-ranked Gozu and Mezu and are now considered reliable partners. And even the newcomer Ghidorah agreed to take over the Labyrinth 10 post without changing his face. As predecessors, they could not afford to miss out on this battle. One other point, the two of them also discovered one more thing. Even if someone broke away from the 30 levels, there was nowhere for the Imperial army to run. Even if those people ran to the first level, which was located at the top, they would still have to be forced to turn back from there. In that light, the responsibility they have taken on in this mission is actually very light. And they find that the more people they lose to themselves, the more people they can kill. Look at us. We're the floor guardians, for better or worse. If this battle is recognized, our status will be enhanced. That's right, that's it, buddy. This time, don't talk about the petty family business there, talk about taking turns and all that. We'll do everything we can to crush the enemy. If any of the Imperials escape, we will expel them all. That's it. I won't let Lady Ramirez down. Since there was no way back, they had to move forward. The uneasiness in their hearts vanished in an instant, and the two men's energy rose with them. And just like that, the task for each person to take on was set. Rimuru asked us to bring as many Imperial soldiers into the maze as possible. In order for that to happen, we have to give our opponents some sort of sweet treat. The group listened and nodded forcefully, indicating that they understood. Everyone is clear about their responsibilities. At least on the first day they planned to quietly watch the enemy's movements. Ramirez originally looked at everyone with satisfaction, but she finally dropped a shock bomb. Very good, very good. Then everyone, come on. By the way, Rimuru said he would be watching the battle as well. Not only is this a way to judge who should be Labyrinth Chief, it's also a chance for him to see how you all behave. The moment those words came out of Ramirez's mouth, everyone's expression suddenly turned serious to the point of being full of killing aura. You say Lord Rimuru will watch us? Zijin had originally been silent, and now even he spoke up. This surprised Apito. The Worm Emperor Zijin is a quiet man who rarely speaks. Aside from his allegiance to the demon Lord Rimuru, the only thing that interests him is to become stronger. Zijin is one such person. Well, Rimuru said he'd watch it too. Stammering in response, Ramirez was caught off guard by her opponent's airs. After all, even Ramirez didn't get much of a chance to watch Zijin speak, and would be surprised quite normally. Oh Zijin, what Ramirez said is true. Rimuru was also intrigued by the strength of the maze members. That's why I chose to trust you and decided to let you take on the heavy responsibility of this battle. Like looking for the steps down for the astonished Ramirez, Veldora so stated. For Veldora, Zijin was an excellent apprentice to the combat training he had implemented since before. He's also a great player who has a long history of friendship with Veldora. Not only that, but depending on the conditions, he even grew to the point where he could fight Veldora to the point of being above even odds. Zijin was too powerful. To ask if there was anyone in the maze who could be Zijin's opponent, there was no one else but Veldora. Just because Zijin was such a master, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was all the more exciting for him. Yeah? Lord Rimuru will be watching to see how we and others fare. It really gets my blood pumping. Let the adults see how much I've grown, and I'll show it all. Hey, that's a must. He says he's looking forward to it, so people are going to surprise him. With a smile of innocence, Ramirez ended with these words. Despite her innocence and kindness, Ramirez is inherently without mercy. She was the one who had become a demon lord and had no objection to the absolute law of the weak and the strong. When entering the maze, everyone will see the rules. Even the general soldiers from the Empire are no exception, and while confirming their own will to enter the labyrinth, they are also asking their instincts, if they can't come out without meeting the conditions, can they still accept this? Will people take this as a threat or a warning? Everyone fantasizes about what riches can be gained in the maze, and like the colony of ants drawn past by sugar, all get sucked into the maze. From this point on, Ramirez stopped being merciful. So she would no longer be polite and would greet these enemies. Next, the soldiers of the Empire's generals will understand. They will witness the true gesture of this maze. Taste the fear. We are going to win. Dedicate the victory to Lord Rimuru. Zijin read the words and rose from his seat. It became a signal that everyone was out in force. In order to get to the venue that had become hell, they'll wait for the guests to arrive. At the entrance of the underground maze, soldiers from the Imperial Army were drawn in one after another. They were in neat rows, their movements were not in the least bit strained, and they were all well behaved. Each person is equipped with a seat belt around their waist that links them together, spacing them back and forth for a total of 3 meters. There were other squads in charge of the fight, and these men were not connected by ropes and could move freely. When there was no combat going on, they held the life-saving ropes that bound those soldiers. In the face of such a large army pressing down on the territory, the maze was nothing. They were prepared beforehand, they were coming to challenge the maze, no one would get lost. In addition to being satisfied with their elaborate arrangement, Calgurio began to think of the wealth he would receive. This maze is basically some kind of trickery for kids. The problem is the magical creatures that inhabit it. It's not just how strong those magical creatures are, it's also a question of how much time fighting can consume. According to the research they've done beforehand, the 60th floor is the bottom floor, but that's not necessarily true. It was said that the labyrinth had so many layers of 100, but he didn't think it made sense. Calgurio always thought it was bluffing. The deeper you go, the more valuable treasures you can acquire, and most importantly, the higher the purity of the magic crystals you can recover. This is fascinating to hear that it increases in proportion to the strength of the magical creatures that inhabit it, etc. But Calgurio had been bitter and found that tricky. In any case, if you can identify the type of magic creature, you will be able to find the proper way to dispose of it. It would be more efficient to hunt that way too. Stroking his proud beard, Calgurio came to this conclusion. Looking at the well-trained general soldiers, the maze is not even a threat. Their majestic looks are proof that they have untouchable power. They've imagined what battles might occur within the maze and have done training. Able hands using spirit magic will confirm the way forward, and a special work team will disarm the traps. The combat team will be responsible for expelling the magical creatures, and the team responsible for handling them will disintegrate those magical creatures and harvest the magic crystals. This sequence of moves will have the top of each column executing. And the acquired treasures will be transmitted to the rear through the linked soldiers. Then it was just passed to the front of the entrance for those waiting over there to move back to Operations Command. Linking soldiers together allows for a change in circumstances. If something happened, they would immediately send back information that had been rigorously trained on these soldiers. Calgurio's response started out well. Over time, however, abnormal changes began to appear. When about 1,000 or so soldiers entered the maze, communication between the two sides was suddenly broken. "My lord, how can this be? What happened to those soldiers?" It is not yet clear. Watching the ropes being neatly cut, one can imagine that space has twisted. Information obtained in advance mentions this, saying that sometimes the structure of the maze can change. But I've heard it only happens every 24 hours. Calgurio agonized over it, but had no intention of preventing the soldiers from parading in. He intended to keep the soldiers rushing in for the time being. As it turned out, he discovered one thing: for every 1,000 or more people who entered, the structure of the maze changed. No, that's not right. By this time Calgurio was alert. I get it. The enemy seemed happy to see us in, too. What does that say? It's obvious. If the labyrinth is overcrowded, they probably won't do well. Going down that staircase doesn't lead to the second basement level, I'm afraid it connects to another level. What? How could such a thing happen? Looking at the surprised staff officer with a foolish look, Calgurio snorted. Of course it's possible. The opponent is at least a demon lord. If they couldn't do even that little thing in their own territory, they would have been destroyed long ago. Calgurio accurately predicted what would happen in the maze. Based on conversations before the soldiers broke off contact, it didn't seem like there was anything unusual going on. But that doesn't mean that something suddenly happened to them. Also, when it was just over 1,000 people, contact was suddenly broken. What do you think that means? I see, Your Excellency is aware of this, I am afraid. With a nod, Calgurio began to think of a course. Several treasures have been shipped over. It's all amazing equipment, or magic steel-made weapons. Everything is top-notch. Moreover, the magic crystal received just now is of excellent quality and has an impeccable energy conversion rate. If the invasion was interrupted at this time, the 2,000 soldiers who had gone in would have lost their lives. Instead of doing that, it would be more effective to stick to the original plan and use that kind of man-see tactics. Calgurio so judged. This is a threat to us. To get us to abandon the maze, they intend to buy time. That way they'll have a chance to wait for reinforcements from Deva Heights. Ridiculous. Even that Dworgen today. Exactly. To interrupt the operation here would be to call the enemy's will. Yes. Then let's get back to the maze battle. Seeing through the enemy's tricks, Calgurio was satisfied. Then weighing the benefits that could be gained against the lives of the soldiers on the scales, he decided to ignore the slightly unnerving elements. It was at this moment that the fate of the Imperial army was sealed. A full day had passed since they had started invading the maze. They pushed on day and night, and about 350,000 soldiers and generals invaded the maze without incident. As usual, for every 1,000 people sent, the route of aggression they take changes. It seemed that only those who ran to a particular floor could barely get a part of their body to appear outside, and the kinds of treasures acquired there would change along with it. There are almost no low-quality objects, which also contain weapons with holes. Those weapons look like a new type of enemy weapon. From this one can infer how panicked the enemy was. If there was time, they would have taken it back. Failure to do so proves that the enemy doesn't have that leeway now. Blame them for trying to suck up customers with a maze, only to have one head and two tails in a sudden situation. They are too stupid. The idea of using the labyrinth to attract people from the surrounding countries, an idea that Calgurio found interesting, yet they couldn't pick up the pieces at the crucial moment, and can only say that they did things too roughly. In this way, at first, Calgurio thought that the demon Lord Raimuru's gang were all fools, but after a whole day, they decided to watch the situation for the time being. Soldiers at the command headquarters would take turns resting. It would have been fine to continue the invasion plan in this manner, but Calgurio suddenly felt uneasy. The total number of people who have broken into the maze is 350,000, right? Yes. Half of our army has invaded the maze. Although almost every full 1,000 people were disconnected, that was as Calgurio had predicted. After a while, someone reported that they had found the soldiers who had entered the maze earlier. The Imperial army's morale was instantly boosted. Originally, everyone was very upset and relieved to know that our soldiers and horses were fine. To get into a panic over a little thing is a disgrace to the Imperial army. All the soldiers thought so, forcing down the restlessness in their hearts to act. So this good news breathes life into them. There was nothing to be afraid of this time, and the pace of aggression increased with it. As a result, half of the general's soldiers entered the labyrinth right now, but so many people were sent, and it still wasn't enough to fill the maze. I didn't realize it was so vast. That's what I heard. Thought we'd be able to suppress the whole maze in a little while. By what they expected to think, the Imperial Army should have taken control of the entire maze long ago. However, this was not actually the case, and when they temporarily kept the soldiers out of the maze, they cut off contact with the people inside. If the troops who had gone in first were found, they would be able to move out a great deal of treasure. But now that the movement into the labyrinth has been interrupted, those gains have been temporarily halted. No one has come out yet, have they? Yes, it seems that in order to get out of there, we have to break through the maze first. Then I've heard that during the invasion, someone in every soldier's head was asking questions of them, right? Exactly. However, although the conditions are clear, it seems that before defeating the Labyrinth King, the Guardians of the 10 Keys need to be crushed first. So that's it, then we haven't crushed them yet? The answer is in sight. But that's not what Calgurio wants to know. The King of the Labyrinth is probably referring to the demon Lord Rimuru. If the goal was to succeed in crushing him, it would have been a great one for them. As a matter of fact, it should be. Yet in fact they were interrupted for a time, didn't continue to send troops in, and currently couldn't even get in touch with the soldiers inside the maze. Do you think it's possible to defeat Demon Lord Rimuru with 350,000 soldiers? The staff officers are at a loss for words when asked, but they answered immediately and with aplomb. The reason the Kingdom of Farmers had failed is because they met Veldora, I believe. If it's just Demon Lord Rimuru, it should be more than enough to defeat him. I think so, too. There's no shortage of people who've taken part in this raider operation, so we just have to wait for them to bring back good news. Seemingly reassured to see someone agreeing with them, the staff officers began to shout one after another that they would definitely win. Yet Calgurio could not erase the uneasiness in his heart no matter what. The first thing is to get in touch with the people in the labyrinth. Also send liaison troops over and try to communicate by various means of communication. Receiving orders from Calgurio, they tried various methods to get in touch, but all failed. They also tried the thought communication or the communication network, but none of the people inside the maze responded. Things have evolved to such an extent that it's hard for the staff members to fool themselves anymore. The loot from the labyrinth had excited them, but in the face of the present, with no future in sight, they began to look demoralized. The reason for all this is the inability to get in touch with the people inside the maze. Without clarity, the function of those staff officers cannot be fulfilled. Then we'll continue to organize the troops and let them enter the maze once more. At this point Calgurio hummed and nodded. Either way, they had to send soldiers in to confirm the situation. Even if they continued to stay on the ground, they couldn't confirm what was going on inside the maze. The entrance to the labyrinth, that door had not been closed, but was still wide open. Nothing has changed since the beginning, as if nothing has happened. Even so, as long as the person who entered next was slightly late, they immediately couldn't sense the scent of the people in front of them. This action was also interrupted by the fact that the gold and silver treasures had been transported smoothly from inside the labyrinth. On the one hand, perhaps because of this, a heavy breath began to pervade the combat command. Then, 2 more days passed. Why doesn't anyone return the favor after that? Since every 1,000 people are put in different places, there's no way to find the forces that invade the depths of the maze again. What, the maze is this big? I don't think. What? It's not all gone. You fools, are you afraid? Everybody calm down. I'm afraid these are all tactics of the demon Lord Rimuru. His purpose is to make us suspicious and give up on the maze. The practice is different now than it was in the beginning, sending out only 1,000 people per hour to enter discreetly. But in that case, It would be difficult to bring back the information, not to mention the treasure. On the first day alone, 350,000 people entered the maze. An additional 150,000 people were added the next day. There were only 30,000 people on the third day. As for the Imperial General soldiers who remained on the ground, it had been reduced to the remaining 170,000. Wouldn't it be wise to hold on to your strength now? We also send supply troops into the labyrinth to extend the activity limits of the General's soldiers. Shouldn't it take at least 20 days to observe the situation? That's so negative. But we still can't reach Lieutenant General Geist or Major General Farragut. Are they still tangling with the enemy, or are they? They have sent out spy troops several times, but none have returned. There has been no contact with reliable friendly forces. That's because of the high concentration of magicules. There could be no other reason. Calgorio so asserted. It would be bad if morale continued to be low. Based on that judgment, he would say that. But it's still hard to erase the uneasy atmosphere that pervades the scene. In an unspeakably eerie silence, the soldiers of the Imperial Army General had an ominous feeling of foreboding. Even the speaker, Calgorio, was no exception. There were 170,000 more Generalissimo soldiers on the scene. The converse can also be said of only 170,000. Maybe I made a big mistake. The thought suddenly flashed through Calgorio's mind. The gate was towering. Nowadays it seems that the door was very eerie and fueled the unease in Calgorio's mind. What will be the fate of the labyrinth's challengers in this door? It wouldn't be long before Calgorio would know where they were headed. 41st through 48th floors. Those Imperial General soldiers who entered the labyrinth, because of the different floors they entered, had fates that were vastly different from each other. One who is put on the 41st to 48th floor can be said to be lucky. Although the magical creatures that appear are very strong, they are only B grade at best. The soldiers were fortified, the magic creatures were not their opponents, and the raider operation went off without a hitch. These Empire's generals and soldiers were very powerful. When converted to an adventurer's rank, everyone comes to C+ as a minimum. It's a first-class skill. This way, they could handle it without any trouble even if they came across a magical creature. They march in neat rows, at this pace. Slightly behind the front row, the combat team took guard action on one side. A stronghold was set up at each corner, followed by the clearing of the entire road. Act according to what they've been trained to do, and gradually take care of the entire floor. Neither had passed the day yet, and the upward steps and the downward steps had been found by them both. Their current combat goal became to crush the Demon Lord with all their war power once they met. The task of capturing the treasures of the upper floors is left to the other troops, or they can wait until it's over. They used the stairs as a stronghold to suppress the entire floor. Then moved on to the strategy. There was a locked room with a door near the stairs. The bulletin board above that door says lounge. Just like the results of their prior investigation, the only thing that was different was that the door would not open. The door is really not open. They deliberately made us unusable. Think so? There's no way to destroy it? Yes. Using firearms or magic had no effect. Just like the road inside the maze, it should be difficult to destroy. After hearing the soldier's report, the captain nodded. It's nothing to be surprised that there will be such an outcome for granted. If the chariot guns are brought in or massive magic is unleashed, perhaps the destruction is possible. However, this would not guarantee the safety of their own troops in the labyrinth. I don't know how many casualties there would be if they planned to launch nuclear strike magic and so on. So the captain decided to challenge the maze head-on, as originally planned. That is, the use of human seed tactics. Now that he heard that even the lounge could not be used, he was not only annoyed, but also took it for granted. Report it up. Then tell them the operation is going well. Yes, sir. He had faltered in the beginning when only 1,000 of them were left. But to panic like this would be a disgrace to the Imperial Army. The department captain decided to continue with the strategy. That decision was the right one. It wasn't long before they rendezvoused with the other troops. Although the floor was larger than expected, there were spirit emissaries working hand in hand with the surveyors, and the raiding operation went smoothly. And defeat, magical creatures will drop magic crystals of good quality, and from the treasure chests they found, great gold and silver treasures will be opened. The man who came down the stairs returned to him, saying that the 42 floors were almost complete. There was a great cheer, and everyone said that the Imperial Army would not be defeated. The next day they also explored all the rooms on the 40th floor. Step into the 42nd floor at this rate and meet the troops who are staying there. They pounded straight into the 43rd floor with the momentum of a bamboozle, approaching the 48th floor in less than 3 days. The results have exceeded expectations. But the 49th layer doesn't start out that easy. 49 to 50 levels of the maze. Ooh, 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 ooh. It's going down, my feet are melting off. Help me. I can't get my hand out. It's a living hell. Drop it and you run into slimes. There's a bunch of slimes everywhere. Slimes, 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 slimes. Halfway through the break, slimes fell from the ceiling. As soon as the corner was turned, the squad was cut off and wiped out. The walls are made of slime, and the floor is slime. Weapons and defenses were destroyed and the soldiers' physical strength was taken from them. What the hell, still no way to break through? Yes. The entire floor smelled of magical creatures, there was no way to sense through magic, and they seemed to have a high level of resistance to physical attacks. Half-assed attacks are useless. And the enemy is multiplying at an abnormal rate. They don't seem to feel pain either and don't seem to be afraid of our attacks at all. If it was an average slime, only one would be nothing to be afraid of, but becoming so massive, it would take a lot of effort to burn the slime out and turned into a tougher opponent than expected. Every few hours reinforcements would come in to help, so the damage they suffered was not so great that they had to retreat. But it's just a matter of time consuming and delaying to come up with the desired results. It turned out that all the floors were not explored until the 3rd day was almost over. This time, they could finally rendezvous with the troops from the upper floors, and they were able to survive with the human sea tactics. And coming to the 50th floor, they saw hordes of the wounded. The road is like a dark, damp cave, the sound of battle echoes here. Damn it, these monsters are back. Someone shouted in feverishness. He was looking at the giant snake that stood in front of him and wouldn't let anyone pass, moving stupidly like the incarnation of darkness. It's a tempest snake. The scales were like armor, half-dangling magic and gunfire could not do the trick. Even if you want to get close enough to cut it with your sword, the tempest snake's poisonous spray can spray up to 7 meters away. The swords are bathed in death spray before they even touch. Damn it. This narrow passage is equivalent to being their world. If we can still get around the wide area, there's nothing we can do. Are the heavy magic cannons ready? It's not working. It's been used just now, and it will be another 2 hours before the energy is replenished. The so-called heavy magic cannon is a new type of magic-guided weapon that is capable of exerting the greatest power among portable weapons. Unlike magic guns that use magic stones as an energy source, they collect magical elements from the atmosphere and are filled with magical elements. It's filled with magic, the elemental magic of the air-breaking cannon, which is a high-powered magic that explodes continuously after compressing air. It doesn't catch fire and can be fired in a specific direction. So this kind of magic is also useful in confined spaces like buildings. Just by being able to manipulate this kind of magic, you will be judged as an A grade, which is a high-level magic. But the problem is that the energy consumption is too great. This is why the surrounding mana is used to fill the maze, but even in a maze with a high concentration of mana, it would take 3 hours to fill it up. That kind of speed is fast enough under normal circumstances, but it was still too slow to use on this one. Oi oi oi, are you kidding me? What does that mean? Does that mean those monsters come back to life faster? The Tempest snakes are clearly unusual individuals. Wearing a collar around its neck, it felt set apart from the other magical creatures. The most important thing is that no matter how many times it is knocked down, after 3 hours it will come back to life. In other words, no matter how many times they are knocked down, they have to fight again as soon as a certain amount of time passes. The tricky part is that there is no so-called safe zone on this floor. And tweets, tweets, tweets. The sounds of fighting began to come from other roads as well. Yes, there's more than one Tempest snake. There were 10 of them found alone. A group of high-risk magical creatures with ranks coming to A are using their characteristics to dominate this area. This is the lair of the black snakes. The Tempest snake was originally a floor guardian of the 40 floors, and now even the spare ones were put together on this floor. The soldiers later managed to rendezvous with reinforcements from the upper floors and had a chance to rearm. This time, they finally had enough heavy magic cannons to defeat the Tempest snake. It was late in the night on the third day that the Tempest snake was finally successfully exterminated. Everyone, while maintaining this floor, beware of monster resurrection. Let the injured and sick take refuge on the upper floor. Yes. With that, the Imperial Army reorganized its forces here. The next thing you know, they're in an even worse hell. 50 to 60th floors of the maze. The 51st floor has a large area of modern access. The Imperials seem to have mastered this one floor, and soldiers could be seen around every corner. The scene can be seen to leave traces of fierce fighting, and one can imagine that this floor is also tricky. One of the troopers tried to make contact with the people on the scene. "How's it going?" To avoid waking the soldiers who were resting, he quietly questioned the station staff. "The situation is dire. We have underestimated the Demon Lord." "What do you mean?" "There are a lot of traps on this floor. We are standing in the right channel. The others should never go. I think most of the traps should have been destroyed by us, but maybe some haven't lost their function." "Got it." That said, those are. In order to report to his superior officer, the unit chief asked for further details. The soldier then told him about the various chemical weapons that seem to be not in use in the Empire either. There is colorless and odorless gas that can poison the eyes and throat. It is also sprayed with neurotoxins as well as melting solution. Those vicious traps maimed quite a few people. The Imperial Army originally thought that this knowledge was exclusive to them, and therefore felt it was all the more threatening. There will be no magical creatures on this floor for the time being. Instead, some of the puppets that used mana as a power source are hovering there. The tricky part is that they seem to be self-healing, and it takes some work to completely destroy them. That's a lot of work. The department captain originally wanted to say that he and the others had also suffered a lot, but he still swallowed those words back and asked the other party to continue to reveal the subsequent situation. Yeah. The weary and the injured went to the 55th level to rest. It should be safe to go over there and have a meal. Thank you. What about the situation on the front line now? The front line, according to the information I just received, they seem to have arrived at the 60th floor. They also say some pretty bullshit things, and if they were to present this information upwards, the people above them would surely think they were crazy. I think it would be tiresome to hear, and even then, do you still want to hear it? Watching the soldier who answered begin to sigh, the troop leader could only nod in agreement. Yes, please. So. Then I told you, I heard there are huge human weapons sitting on the 60th floor. About the strength of that guy. The more you listen, the more you feel, makes you want to say that because the other side is so strong it's a mess. It is said that even if the A-ranked fighters team up to challenge, they still can't find the knack to beat their opponents. The opponent's body is made of magic steel and physical attacks like swords and guns don't work at all. Moreover, The opponent is always protected by a barrier, and it is said that even the heavy magic cannon can't hurt him in the slightest. There's nothing to be done, that's what's happening right now. And then there was the sound that came out of that huge magic doll, and it turned out to be surprising that the sound was similar to that Master Ghidorah. Even I find it hard to believe, but it has to be reported upwards, right? It teaches one how to do it, really. The soldier's complaint came this way. The head of the department decided to report what he had just said directly to his superiors for their instructions. We can only go forward now. You guys go to the 55th floor first, go there and talk about what to do in the future. Yes, sir. At such times, one can only do as one pleases the superior officer. There is no alternative on the side